Ken here, your thrifty apprentice, and welcome back to the channel's version of a crafty corner. Today's video, we are going to be creating this journal in which will be showing you a step-by-step process for one method of making a junk journal. Recently, I was blessed enough to have my Etsy shop completely sell out on all of its inventory. So I had to push what I had planned for today's video back in order to get some inventory created to get up on the shop. With that being said, I decided to turn the camera on and to shoot a process video. So we will be creating this journal, but I will be showing you kind of step-by-step process for one of the methods for creating a junk journal. It happens to be, to me, the easiest method for creating one, and it's a way to turn out a junk journal really quickly. So that's what we'll be doing in today's video. So let's get started. So for step one, we're going to start with the cover. First, what you want to do is choose the material for your cover base. You have many different options for this particular part. First, I'll start talking about chipboard. Chipboard is typically your common everyday household, thicker than cardstock, but thinner than cardboard material that you can find. You typically find it in forms of like cereal boxes, or cake flour, or cake mix boxes, or even food packaging. There's bookboard. Bookboard is typically something that you order specifically for bookbinding. Now, I don't always order bookboard. I typically find offcuts of matting board, which is like basically the same. I'll just, combine one or two pieces together in order to get it as thick as I need it to be for the base of my book. And these are as thick as the thinnest bookboard that you can find, which you find typically on like Amazon, places like that. Next is cardstock. Cardstock, again, comes in many different forms. You have your regular weight cardstock that you can find in your average everyday big box store. There's also pattern paper. Pattern paper is normally a little bit thicker than the average cardstock. It can always go up. It can also go all the way up to a heavier cardstock. It's file folder. File folders are typically really easily accessible. You can get a lot of them in a box. Really good finds at like thrift stores. You don't necessarily have to buy these brand new. I typically do a lot of my thrifting on places like Facebook Marketplace, Let Go Offer Up, places of that nature. Then there's recycled books. Recycled books can come in many different forms. You can have hardcover, soft covers, and those can range anywhere from sketchbooks that you've already bought and de-gooded, composition books, which come with hard or soft cover. This one happens to have a hard cover, and I just removed the composition college rule papers from it and have been using it to bind signatures. And then you have your hardcover. Hardcover books are typically recycled. You can find them at garage sales and yard sales, maybe from the public library. Books that are about to be burned in or disbanded are often great finds for recycling and creating brand new books out of. Lastly, we have our miscellaneous objects. Miscellaneous objects can range from envelopes to like the little brochures that you get in the mail, newspapers, and even magazines. All of these can be used as basis for art journals or junk journals, sketchbooks or notebooks. Each one will require a different type of treatment in order to convert it into a cover. For this video, we are going to be choosing a recycled book cover. I've chosen the composition notebook book cover because it's big enough to contain one signature. I don't have to do a lot to repurpose the surface, and it's almost the perfect size for a normal journal. The object is to show you how you can use the smallest amount of materials and still be able to turn or recycle, or should I say upcycle, one of your older recycled books and breathe new life into it as a new art or junk journal. If there are any elements you need to add before you start to decorate, you would want to do that. In this case, because I'm using a recycled book cover, I actually want to reinforce the spine before I start to decorate my cover. This is pretty durable, but I still want to reinforce it just to make sure, because whenever I am binding books, I always want to give it the ultimate strength. Now, with reinforcing our spine, we can use many methods. You can use extra cardstock or chipboard, or maybe even bookboard. And fabric can also be used. Because fabric will not tear, it does help to lend to making the spine stronger and the book to be bound better. Now, I do not use paper, but if you want to use paper, you can. Just keep in mind, paper can crack over time with the opening and closing of books. So, for this reinforcement, I've chosen file folder. I simply cut down 2 pieces of file folder that will fit the width of my spine in order to reinforce it. And I'm going to be gluing these 2 pieces together to make it thicker and to add just that much more strength. Now that we're at this point, this is where I would make my glue selection and decide on if I'm actually going to be doing any sewing on the cover. Since we're keeping this as beginner friendly as possible, we will not be doing any sewing, and we will be using the most accessible glue, I do believe. Now, let's choose our glue. There's several different glue types out there. There's school washable glue, which is a white form of water-based PVA glue. There are tacky glues, for instance, like Aleene's Original Tacky Glue. This again is a white water-based PVA glue, but it's not washable like a school glue. This glue also comes in a clear form. You have glues like Mod Podge. A lot of artists and crafters use Mod Podge, especially here in the United States. I do believe it's available in Canada and Australia as well. All countries will probably have their own form of school glue, which is why it is the one we will be using today. You have glues like Fabri-Tac or Fabri-Fix, which is a silicone-based glue, not water-based, so it dries quickly. Think of it sort of as like a cold hot glue. Now, every country may not have this brand, and every country may not have access to this one. So again, to keep it simple, we're using a school washable glue. Lastly, everybody can find a glue stick. Here's the thing about glue sticks. Keep in mind they typically are not formulated like other glues. They're made from less adhesive materials, so they will tend to be the glue form that will give way quicker or not hold as long. So you always want to keep that in mind. Typically when I'm using a glue stick, I'm going to always put it in combination with another glue type. Now that we've chosen our glue, we're going to go ahead and bind. I've just taken some of this white school glue and put it into a needle nose squeezable bottle to make it easier for me to squeeze out on little pieces around corners, details of that nature. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of this glue here, and I'm gonna show you guys a trick. Now, typically when you're working with a white water-based glue, you're gonna get wrinkling, you're gonna have long drying times, and 9 times out of 10 you have to put whatever you're working on under something flat and heavy to make sure that it flattens back out, because water-based glue does have a tendency to warp your projects. Well, I have a tip for you. I take whatever project that I'm working on, as long as it's small enough, I turn on my lamination machine. I put it on its lowest setting, give it a time to heat up and get ready, and then I run that item that I just glued together through my lamination machine in order to quickly dry it and get it ready for continuous use right there on the spot. And here we have it, our reinforcement, all dry, flat, bound and ready to go. So now we're going to glue the book spine reinforcement into the book. Depending on what video you watch, these steps may be different, and that's okay because we all have different ways. Now I'm going to just place it down, and there we have that spine reinforced. Now, because this is too big for me to run through my machine, I can't get instant dry. So first thing I'm going to do is close my book to make sure that it'll fold. And I see that it has definitely reinforced the spine. I'll open it back up. Now this I will sit under something, giving it time to flatten out and dry before moving on. I just want to make sure that it is adhered down really well, and I'm not really worried because we are going to be covering this with more reinforcement. We're not done. Now that it has had time to set, I'm going to be reinforcing my spine further with fabric. Let's make this clear. This step is completely optional. You do not have to do this. I just like to make sure that any journal I'm going to be possibly listing has the strongest binding and the strongest structure I possibly can. And this step can be a bit finicky. The thing about working with fabric, and I've chosen muslin here, that's what we call it in the States. I think it may be called calico if I'm not mistaken in other areas. But I've chosen a piece of that fabric, and as you know, it is really thin and kind of see-through, if you can see that. So there's always the chance of glue seepage when you're doing this step. So we always want to make sure that we lay down the thinnest possible layer of glue, but enough to make sure we can adhere the fabric down and get it bound to add strength to our spine. So the first things first, I want to put some glue down the middle of the spine. So I'll just put glue here, and then using my good old finger tool, I'm gonna smooth that out into the thinnest possible layer I can get it without there being any like mountains, so to speak, in the glue. Now I'm going to place down my fabric, and I don't mind the strings and stragglies. I actually think that adds to the character, and I'm gonna try to lay that fabric down evenly, making sure it covers both the top and the bottom. Try to kind of get it in the middle, and then we're just gonna smooth that down. Now again, I want to try to avoid glue seepage, and it may take just a second for it to come up if it's going to seep. I grab a bone folder because I want to make sure I work that down. I'm going to test to make sure that my book will close. We'll put glue here. I'll just thin that out again like I did on the spine. We'll lay that on down. I like to start in the middle and kind of work my way up, pulling as I go just ever so slightly to get that fabric tight across the back of that book. I bone fold it down to make sure, and we are in good shape. We haven't had any seepage. We're gonna cross our fingers that we don't have any. Finger tool. Same on this side, starting in the middle. And I'm just gonna finger work my way up. Grab my bone folder. Now that we have reinforced, we're gonna go ahead and actually start decorating our cover. So this is the point where you can actually do whichever one you want. Some people may do step 2 before step 1, where they prepare the signature first. Some people may actually do, as we're doing, step 1, cover, and then prepare the signature behind it. Whatever your choice, these steps hopefully have been simplified to help you no matter what order you decide to do it in. We're going to move on to decorating the cover. With this particular type of cover base we've chosen, it's really easy to decorate the covers. This is one reason I wanted to choose this one. It's sort of like a beginner junk journal, right? So you already basically have the work done for you. Now, you could cover this completely in many different things, fabric, paper, what have you, but we're basically going to be using pattern paper to cover the journal, and we're going to keep a lot of the integrity of the composition book itself. So let me just show you guys a couple of things that I've chosen for decorating my cover. You keep in mind, can choose whatever you want. I just want to kind of give you guys some ideas. Keeping in mind, this video was more about the steps to constructing versus the decorating. So what I've chose for my cover are pattern paper, which I've already cut down to fit my front and back cover. I just need to round my corners to make sure that it's right. And as you can see, I'm not completely covering the composition book. I'm still leaving a lot of the white visible, and I'm going to be using that as a design element. To my front cover, I like to add a focal image. This is going to be a very simple formula. So you have the backing paper, which we've chosen as pattern paper. I'm going to have a focal image backing paper, which is something I chose based on the color of the focal image, just for offsetting, and I'll sit that there. Then I'm going to have die cuts. Die cuts. Now my die cuts, if you have a die cut machine, great. Most people who may just be getting into this, you won't have die cuts. Now mine were cut from my brother's scan and cut machine, which has die cuts built into it. Most people may have a manual crank die cut embossing machine. You don't need those, guys. You can cut these, you can print out clip art in these little shapes and fussy cut them out. You can just use some cardstock and just start cutting out shapes and twirls and designs, because it's simply meant to be background noise behind the focal image. So what my plan is here is to arrange these. I've chosen this little journaling card out of a pattern pack folder. It actually came out of the same one as this one. If I'm not mistaken, is this the same paper? Let's check to see. Not quite, but it came out of the same pattern pack. And it says, "You are a sky full of stars." And I'm going to be using it offset as the focal image on the front. I'll make like the little die cuts kind of wrap into it like so to frame it off maybe. I found this little flower, wooden flower embellishment. I think I'm going to stick there in the corner. I'm thinking the book plate out. What do we have here? I have, remember. I like that. So look at the message. Remember, you are a sky full of stars. Love that message. So I'll be cutting that out to use as the book plate right up there. So because this is not a decoration video, I just kind of wanted to show you guys the decoration I was going to be using in the order I was going to be kind of putting it on. So hopefully it'll give you some ideas and maybe show you or guide you somewhere, lead you in a direction that you can kind of run with for decorating your cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this glued down and adhered in place, and then we'll come back to move on to decorating the inside of our cover, excuse me. To be noted, this is the point when you want to start thinking about a closure. Because we haven't glued down our backing papers yet, if this is where you wanted to attach a ribbon or a piece of calico, muslin, or something of that nature in order to bind as your closure, this is where you would bind as your closure, add as your closure. This is where you would want to start thinking about that. So here we are. It's the next day and the cover is completely dry. So what I did was I glued down all of the images onto the cover. I placed it under something heavy, a couple of heavy books, and then I just let it dry overnight so I could make sure that everything was laying down nice and flat and dry. And this was the result. I'll give you guys another tip really quickly before we move on. So here, when I was doing the book plate, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but that book plate was actually white, was actually sort of off tannish, I'm sorry, with black writing. So I took the vintage photo distress ink and inked it up, and then took a gel pen and just wrote over the word remember in order to change the color of both the background and the writing. And I adhered that to a piece of black cardstock which was rounded off on the corners and then put down as the book plate. Just wanted to give you guys that. There's another quick tip, so you can change things up to look the way you want them to and to match the decorations that you're doing. Next, we'll complete the cover by doing the inside. Now, before this point, we had already reinforced our spine and put down a piece of fabric in order to hide that reinforcement and to help the inside of our journal look nicer, and it also adds strength to the spine as well. So here, just like with the cover, you can choose to decorate the inside with whatever material you choose. Pattern paper, paints, all the stencils, all those great things that we talked about having as an option to do with the cover, the front cover itself. As for me in this project, and just to show you guys how to keep it really simple, I've actually just chosen 2 pieces of pattern paper, which I've already cut, rounded off, and inked. And they're just going to fit here on the inside to serve as the inside of my covers. Now, if you're wondering, this pattern paper was made from me tea dyeing a piece of cardstock. After it was tea dyed, I then took a stencil, laid it on top of the paper, and then took my vintage photo distress ink and just stenciled on the design and inked around the edges. I'm going to trim off the excess fabric off the top and the bottom of the journal. I'm going to use our school glue to adhere down the 2 inside panels, and then I'm going to press them under something heavy again for a couple of hours just to make sure that it adheres down well, and then we'll be back to move on to step 2, which will be working with our signatures. This will be the point after you put down your inside panels to do your pre-binding decorations. For instance, if there are any pockets or belly bands or anything like that that you plan to put on the front or the back inside cover that you think would interfere or make it maybe bulky when it comes to binding, or maybe make it hard to bind, you would want to go ahead and do that step after you adhere down your inside panel pieces and before we move on to the binding step. Since this isn't a decoration video, but more so a process video, I'll let you guys work that out, and then we'll be back to move on to showing you how to pick papers for put together and construct your signature. Step 2 is the signature. Now, depending on who you are, once you get into journaling, you may choose to do step 2 first and then do step 1. So choose to do your signature first and then design your cover to go to your signature, which is the way it's done in a lot of cases, especially if you're designing from like a DigiKit. I'll do it that way sometimes, but for the most part, I do the cover first and then the signature. But either way, this would be the steps for it. So first things first, we want to choose the material for our signature. If you're going to be making an art journal, it's a little bit different, because if making an art journal, then you're going to want to choose papers that are going to be sized and robust and meant to handle dry and wet media. In most cases, this is going to be a mixed media paper. For instance, I have here a Creative Mark Universal mixed media pad. This is 9 by 12, 90 pound mixed media paper. It's a pretty nice all around robust paper. You may also choose to bind an art journal with watercolor paper. Watercolor paper, again, is a little bit heavier weight most times. This is this is a 90 pound as well, but this is a 90 pound watercolor paper, so it's going to be sized a little bit differently from a mixed media paper, but both of them work really, really well for dry and wet media alike. Now, the type or the grade of paper that you put into your book will determine whether it's student or whether it's a more artist professional grade journal. For instance, these 2 are student grade papers, so if I bind my book with these papers, I'll have a student grade book. On the other hand, I could choose to bind my art journal with arches. which we know is a professional watercolor paper. And of course, if I bound my book with this, I would have a professional book. Most of my books are student grade, I will admit. Now let's talk about a junk journal. A junk journal is sort of a free-for-all. I have here coffee dyed papers, tea dyed papers, watercolor dyed papers, and then I have specialty papers. These papers are comprised of regular copy paper that has been dyed, college rule paper that has been dyed, stationery paper that has been dyed. And here we have copy paper that has been dyed and then stenciled, or dyed and stenciled, in order to give us, here we have, this is a tea dyed stencil paper. And here we have coffee dyed stencil paper. You can also use specialty papers. Specialty papers can range from newspapers to magazine pages, coloring book pages, pattern paper, a handmade fold paper, a different version of that paper that has something encased inside. In this case, those are dried rose leaves encased inside that faux paper. Those are the type of papers that you can bind a book with. Now, you can also do what I call an art book, where you bind both junk journal pages and art journal pages into one book. And that's what I'm going to be doing with this book that we're creating today. So I'm going to be taking papers from both my junk journaling pile and my art journaling pile. I'm going to combine them into one book to make what I call an art book. Okay, you guys bind your book with whatever you choose to. I just wanted you to look at the different range of things that you can include in your book. Now that we have the material chosen, we can move on to folding our papers and fitting them into a signature. Here we are, the pages that I've selected for my signature. I've selected watercolor, I've selected mixed media paper, watercolor paper, and that's actually recycled watercolor paper. It's actually really great for mixed media too. Used it in a couple of videos. We have coffee, tea, and watercolor dyed copy paper, coffee and tea dyed college rule paper, a coloring book page, a stationery, pattern paper, a coffee and a tea dyed stencil paper, and then I've chosen the coffee stained faux rice paper, and that's 20 sheets altogether. Now these three I'm going to put to the side because I know they're already tall enough. I'm going to wait till I put all of the other pages in the signature and cut it down to size. And then I'm going to put these in at that point because I want to create pockets of whatever may be left hanging over. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But for right now, what we need to do is to create a couple of templates to help us cut and bind our book. I just have a brochure here from an apartment, like when you go view apartments to look at them. I'm going to pull the first leaf off of that brochure. So you'll take your cover and you're going to measure. And the best way to do this is to actually close your book and push. Can you see that? You want to close your book and push that template all the way to the back. Make sure it's not bending but secure. And then you are going to mark how far over you want your signatures to come in this book. Now with that template cut, we want to measure our signatures to fit the height and the width of the template. Now you can do this several different ways. You can do it one page at a time if you choose to, which I think leads to more adjustment at the end, or you can do it all at once, which is how I typically do it. Now sometimes I will go through and individually cut each paper to be the same height, then fit them all together and then cut the width at one time. The reason I do that is in cases of papers like the specialty paper that we have here. You know, preferably I would want to go ahead and cut it to height first and then fit it in with all of the other ones. So doing it that way, or you can just put them all together and then do one cut, width and height at the same time. I'll let that be your choice. So what we're going to do at this point is cut all of our papers to the size of the template and get them fitted together. Here I have the signature cover cut down width and lengthwise. And now I want to add my additional pieces of papers that I was going to fold into pockets. I'm going to show you guys how to do one of these, and then I'll do the other two off camera. I want to find where I would like to put one of these pockets. It just so happens that right behind the signature cover, I would like to put one. Pick up the signature. We will place the coffee dye at the very end to make sure it lines up with the end of that page. And then we'll simply fold it around. And actually, it's not long enough for a pocket, guys. Look, it's gonna go all the way around exactly. So we're just gonna use that as an extra page in the journal, just like so. It'll be great for clipping tags onto. You can still write and draw on that, and it'll fit right behind the journal cover, just like that. I think that's gorgeous. So I'm gonna go through and put these two in, and then we're gonna have to go and look at doing our pre-binding decoration. Because the next step that we're due is going to be binding, we want to do all those things to the signature that we need to do, or that would be complicated to do once it's sewn in. For instance, any sewing, any stamping, any stenciling, any of those things that would be really hard to kind of get down into the crease of a book when it's bound to do. You want to go ahead and do that before we move into the next step, which is binding. So I'm going to add my 2 additional pages, and then I'll do all of my pre-binding decoration, and we'll move directly into binding our book. So look, just had to show you guys really quickly. This is some custom DIY washi tape I just made. I don't know, I was going through some scraps and haphazardly looked at this scrap of paper and got that idea, and now I have 2 pieces of washi tape I can decorate with. I'll show you guys how to make this in the upcoming video. Now that all of our pre-binding decoration is finished, we can move on to step 3, binding our journal or our book. There's several different methods you could choose to bind your book. You could choose to do the pamphlet stitch, which comes in variations of 3 or 5 holes. I typically let that be depicted by the length of my book. You can use sewing to bind your book if the type of material you're using to create your journal permits. Please forgive any of the noise you guys hear outside with the motorcycle. He's having fun in the street, evidently. Another binding type you may choose is staples. Again, that depends on the type of material you're using to create your journal. And then there's tab. I'll be honest, I do not have much experience with tab binding. I typically stick to the basic, which is the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Take a sheet of paper, and I'm just using my scrap paper that I was stamping on when I was decorating the signature. And basically, you really just want to tear it down just wide enough to cover the spine, or about as wide as the fabric strip was that you had in the spine, and fold it in half. Now take that strip of paper and fold it in half, and then you measure in as far as you would like to go. I always go about 3/4 of an inch. Open that up all the way, and there you have 3 equally spaced points in order to bind your book. So where each of these crease folds or the folds intersect would be and I numbered those in the order I normally sew the stitch. But you don't have to number anything at all because it's all evenly spaced. I'm going to flip this inside out. So I want to find the middle. Now we can transfer our marks from our paper to our book spine. We're just going to line it up with that line. So fine liner to just dot in the middle where those dots should be. Now I'm just going to take my awl and just kind of work through there just a little. Now I'm going to take embroidery floss. You can use embroidery floss, you can use waxed yarn, but you need some type of stronghold binding. Now, some people do not like embroidery floss because there's a lot of little strings. I love it because it is a lot of little strings that are strong when they're all together. And it's very economical and very easy to come by. So I'm just gonna thread this through an embroidery needle. Now I'm gonna pull out the signature. So I've shown you guys that stitch many times before, but I went, just to recap, I went out through the middle, in through the top, out through the bottom, in through the middle. And when I came in through the middle, I did my best not to sew through the string that was already hanging out. I will link a video showing me doing that 3-hole pamphlet stitch in detail. So now I'm going to put one end of the string on one side and one on the other side, making a bridge. And I'm going to tie off after I make sure that it's secure. One way I test it is I'll flip it over and I'll pull. If you hear that snap, then you know it's tight enough. We'll go over left, let's do it the right way, over right, and then I like to do over left again, just to make sure. All right, now you can either snip yours off, and I am going to tie a cute little bow here in the middle, like so. Some little string hang down into the hanging strings. I really wanted to do some sewing, but yeah, no. But that's the process for actually putting the book together, guys. So we've gone through the cover inside and out. We've gone through a signature, what it is, putting it together. We've gone through the binding process. And the only thing left for us to do is to simply have fun and go crazy creating. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to take time to add all the additions that I wanna add to this book before I list it. And then we'll do a final flip through. Here we are. I have completed all of the additions to the journal, and now we're finally ready for a flip through. This is the point of the video where I will say goodbye to anyone who was just here to see the process and the construction. And for those who are here or decided to stay for the flip through, here we go. As you know, this was the front of the journal. I have added a closure. You may remember these type of closures I made when we did the easy fabric sew or fabric cover journals. So I had a lot of the things that's going to be in here is stuff that I've already had pre-made, and I do suggest that you know, when you make your ephemera, make it several of them or several different versions of it at a time, so that you'll have it prepared ahead in order to, you know, embellish your journals with. So on the inside cover, and a lot of this was embellished with things that I know could be found around the house to make it really easy for a beginner journalist to recreate if they chose to, or to create their version from some similar material, or for anyone who decided to purchase it to easily take it and make it their own. So I've started to leave strings when I sew. I kind of like that look that it gives. So here we have that faux rice paper with stenciling on the inside. Of course, you know, we have that stencil panel with a pocket. And here just a journaling card that's made from, I think, like the blinds of a window out of a magazine, and then I just cut out the word hope. We have some stamping there of some birds. Just a really simple, easy, effective way to decorate. Flipping over here, we have a tag clipped in, and most of the embellishments are clipped in so that they can be moved around at will and used for the type of decoration that suits the user, right? So this is just beautiful little journaling tag that was made here. And a lot of it is made from all of the remnants from the cover and from the inside cover. This is a die cut. This is some DIY washi tape that I made, which I will have a video coming out on doing that soon. So back with some, I want to say it's tea dyed, or maybe it's coffee dyed. I think it's tea dyed. And that's just a little ribbon, glitter ribbon from like the Dollar Tree. So I found things that I just kind of had laying around the studio to do embellishment. And for the things that I didn't have, I made, for instance, like the washi tape. I wanted some washi tape, so I just made some to put there. All right, and we have plenty of journaling, stenciling. Next, we're going to come across a bookmark. This is actually a journaling card. So it's a bookmark that fits across the top of the page. On the back, you're going to have journaling space as well. The journaling space inside. And there it just says, be true to you. Journaling card. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I made these from the front of the brochures from the motel, from when I went on vacation. And this just clipped across the top of this page. If I can get it back in. And that journaling card fits under there. And on the back of that, there's also a journaling card slid under just one of a sunflower. Now this was a, I want to say a thank you, one of those thank you cards. I just cut off the front because it had that beautiful sunflower, which happens to be my favorite flower. And then we have, this is mixed media paper. And then lined paper with stenciling. All of this is coffee and tea dyed. That is watercolor paper, if you remember. Here we have more stenciling. Then you come over to the front side of a pocket that's inserted into the signature. Here we have, this envelope was made from, and this is holding a journaling card, which is made from another one of those brochures. And this envelope was made from, this is a magazine image. It's just a picture I cut out of a magazine. I glued it down onto paper bag, actually. Just sort of have a lining. I stitched around it. Took a ink pen and just kind of wrote all across the front, sort of postcard style. Stamped an Eiffel Tower kind of traveling stamp there, and I love the way it skipped. I didn't do that on purpose, but I think it really added a nice effect to it. And of course I left the string on because, like I said, I'm starting to leave string on everything. I love it. I like the shagginess that it adds to the journals. And that's just clipped in here, okay, with stenciling on the back. Love that. This is that stationery paper that I got from the off shop. It was really, really cool, and I coffee dyed that. Here we have more mixed media paper. Then we're coming across lined paper. Now this was an image that was inside the same magazine that I've been using for most of everything else. I cut out the word powerful. Don't know why I couldn't get that out. And just put it down there on that image. That's a L tuck there that's holding. Now this tag is decoupage. This is a napkin that I got from the Dollar Tree that I decoupaged on top of a book page. and then cut it into a tag form, and then backed it with paper bag for journaling purposes. Just add at the top to that, and there you go. You have a cute, quick little tag, and it just fits right in there for some additional journaling space. We're gonna flip on over. Again, we're coming across stenciling and watercolor paper, and you guys remember the T stencil paper that I had. So that's been inserted in with stenciling on the inside that carries over to just this little page embellishment. Now this was like the offcut of some music paper, the pattern paper from the front of the journal, and then this is that same decoupaged napkin. This is an offcut of that tag that I made, and I just kind of put it there as a paper ruffle. Okay, and then more mixed media paper, watercolor paper. Keep in mind this black paper that you're seeing is watercolor dyed sketchbook paper or copy paper, which is you can draw on. And then this is just a little paper collage that I made. Put a brad in the middle, just continuing to bring in all the elements of the decoration throughout the journal. And then the middle of the signature is a coloring page. I put things like coloring pages and games in the middle of the signature so you have the full thing to do. Love that. I haven't added any dingly danglies to the inside. I don't think I will. Now we're moving over towards the second part of the journal, and then here we're going to have some tags that are clipped down. That's just a bookmark there. That's basically just pattern paper with a sticker, and then it was laminated to make a bookmark, sort of a really lightweight writing board, so to speak. And there's just another little journaling tag that was made from, this was in a hospital magazine, and it was a drawing that was on the wall, and I just kind of cut that little section out. I think you can even still see the little light socket in it. I think it's so cute, it adds to it. And then I just used a little offcut of the decoupage page to add a tag there, and that lives here. You can use that bookmark wherever you want, or you can pull that writing board out to use it as you want. Watercolor paper, mixed media paper. Then we're going to come across another clip in, which contains, let's see, what we got here. We have a one pager. You guys remember these? I put these in a lot of the journals. It was just a magazine image that has been backed with tea-dyed paper, right? For drawing, it'll take watercolor pencil. And that page actually has the finishing for light washes, so that will be fine on that. And this is just a mixed media one pager, so it has watercolor paper on the inside of a card, which has journaling spaces on the back and on the top inside, painting there. And that lives on this page like this. Let me get that back in place. All right, moving on, we got more stenciling all around. And then this is the back of the tea dyed, which was turned into a pocket, which just has this little journaling card in it. It says, enjoy the little things. That lives in there. Watercolor paper, and then more stenciling. And there we have, what's that, mixed media? That's the back of that stationery paper. Here, another little page decoration with a page ruffle on it. I was going to make that a belly band. Like, you could take something like that and put it in the middle of the page. Just glue it on the top and the bottom to make it a belly band for inserting something. But I just made it in page decoration there. Glued it all the way down. Still have plenty of journaling space here. I think that just added something to the book. More stenciling, which comes into a pocket, which has this little home journaling card in it. We've got watercolor paper, more line paper, mixed media. And all of this paper can be either journaled on, as far as like writing, quotes, whatever you want to write, keeping your diary in it. But these pages can also be drawn on. You can sketch on them. You can use your colored pencils on them. You can use watercolor pencils on them. You can use light watercolors on them. Some of the pages you can just use watercolors, water soluble media on, period, because you have mixed media pages as well as watercolor pages in here. Coming over to the back, now this is what I call page tape. Sort of the same concept as a washi tape, but it's actually page tape. Truth of the matter is, I use it for if a page is damaged in a certain spot. I'll just take this, this DIY page tape, and it adds a beautiful decorative element at the same time, kind of melting the page. So love that. Here on this page we have a journaling card. Yep, there we go. It just lives in there, and most of this was made from magazines and a decoupage book. And we have more stenciling, more stencil dyeing, which closes over to the very back. And here we have our last journaling card, which has green backing paper, a little tag, and that lives there. And the back of our journal. And there you have it, guys. I think that is a beautiful little journal. I think that's a beautiful way throughout this in order to construct a really easy journal. You can embellish it and decorate it any way you want. As I said, this is where you get to create and just have fun. Hopefully you guys saw something in this video that is going to help you out on your journal adventures, some tips, tricks, techniques, anything of that nature. Please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Sharing is caring, so please share the video. Go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell. Use the comment section. Let me know what you guys thought of this process. Is this something that you could follow that would make it easy for you to construct a journal? Let me know. I would really love to know that. Hit us up on all the social media sites, and don't forget about the Thrifty Apprentice sponsored Facebook group, Paints, Pencils, Pastels, and Markers. And today is the last day for entries into the Thrifty Praying Challenge that's going on inside that group, for all of those who have been participating. So beautiful drawings been submitted, beautiful artwork has been submitted. I've been having fun watching those paintings come in. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. Use all of the links in the video description to your discretion. There is a recommended product link in there. There is a link to the Etsy shop, which finally, now that this journal is complete, there will be merchandise reloaded onto it. Yeah, thank you guys so very much for joining me here. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Until then, as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting and crafting.